Welcome back, everybody, to Fantasy Fest here on Fantasy Pros. Of course, we're brought to you by Betting Pros. Make sure you download the all-new Betting Pros app, sync your sports books, and get ready. You can see behind him my guest, Sam Hoppen, our new data scientist. He's the Mad Lab guy in the coat, mixing all the beakers and things, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, explosions happen and amazing numbers come out. You can see the backdrop behind him. Sam Hoppen's going to be working for us on the Betting Pro side, on the Fantasy Pro side this year. We're happy to have him on the Fantasy Fest joining us, and also joining us right now to talk a little bit about wide receiver tiers and the rankings over on FantasyPros.com is Alfredo Brown from Football Guys. You can follow him at Pretend GM. The Pretend GM is here in the flesh live with us, and I was in the flesh live with him for Flex Draft in New York City. Fredo, my friend, it was great to hang out with you. How do you feel about your draft when you came out of the Flex League, though? Because it is an early draft. So looking back on it now, how do you feel?
Did not feel great leaving there. Did not feel awesome. That was I haven't had many of those live in-person drafts, and the energy it's such a shift to be there. It's people throwing the picks up onto the board, and everyone was making their picks in 10 to 15 seconds, and it would get to me. I'm like, and I'll just throw out a name that I would never even draft, but it was still a ton of fun.
It's such a tough room, and it's so many good people in those drafts too. And I think Jamie Eisenberg was in yours, right? Jamie's usually in mine. He was in yours this year. Just like the names are just awesome. It's a great group of people. We have such a fun time. In our league in the Superflex, I won in 2019, Wozniak won in 20 and 21, and then I won again in 2022. So there's only two guys who have won that in the last 4 years. And Adam Ronis has been in the finals, I think 3 of those 4. So he is pissed off, and he's like coming for everybody. So it is a tough room. Sam, it is so great. Like, I know in COVID and pandemic, we kind of missed those in live drafts. But as Alfredo was saying, the in-room energy is so fun, and it's so nice to be in there again, especially when you get like, some folks are really passionate about it, whether it be, obviously we're in the professional sector of it, but just those people who love this, right? The people who are watching Fantasy Fest right now. The energy in those rooms is something that I know I missed, and it's great to have it back again.
Yeah, I've never been to the Flex Leagues, obviously, but I'll be heading out to Vegas for some FFPC drafting here shortly. And nice. I mean, you've got a big ballroom filled with drafts just going on left and right. And you feed off the energy, and there's a lot of sharp people in there talking ball and drafting players. Yeah,
I've been in those rooms too. We did a couple of them in Atlantic City years ago. It's just it's a fun spot. Look, this is just making me want to draft more teams. But speaking of which, it's a wide receiver era that we're living in. And I think everybody is starting to understand that finally. I've been, kind of at the top of my soapbox screaming and yelling about this. And we're going to go through the tiers here. And if you want to see the tiers, you can go to fantasypros.com/rankings. You can look at all of them. You can see the tiers and the rankings. And the tiers are important because, I always feel like when you can start to quantify these groups, it makes it easier to target them. And obviously this first grouping, for me, I have Jefferson and Chase kind of in a tier unto themselves, but I'm okay with putting Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp in this tier 1. And that's where we're going to begin. So that tier 1 is Jefferson, Chase, Hill, and Kupp. I'm going to start with you, Sam. You're the new guy around these parts here. And we've been trying to get you on the podcast, but it's just one thing after another. You're so busy in the laboratory. Here's my question for you. You're at the top of the board. You want to take a wide receiver. You taking Chase, you taking Jefferson, and who and why?
It's Jefferson for me easily. He's just so consistent what he's done in his first couple seasons in the NFL, and is just a target hog in Minnesota. Obviously, they brought in Jordan Addison this offseason, and based on the training camp reports, looks like he's been playing well. But Jefferson is just as good as there is in terms of pure wide receiver. And I think he's someone who's not going to lose you your week in fantasy football. So it's just too easy for me to click Justin Jefferson with the 101. And I love Jamar Chase too. He's got as high of a ceiling, but he's competing with T. Higgins. He's competing with Tyler Boyd. And I think that competition is a little bit more stiff, even though there's a slight upgrade at quarterback for Jamar Chase.
Everybody who watched the shows last year knows that Justin Jefferson was my 1-1 pick. This year, I think it's very close. Chase, to me, I think has a real opportunity if he could stay healthy, and Burrow can stay healthy for 17 games. But that's the caveat right now. Can they do that? If so, I think there is a very special season on the horizon for them. Alfredo, top of the wide receiver class for you. This is kind of like the Coke or Pepsi question from back in the 80s. Now, I know I'm old enough to remember that. Maybe you guys are not. However, is it Chase or Jefferson for you?
I'm going to lean Jefferson as well. I just think there's a little less volatility there. And I know people might be worried about, like, what do we get with a full season of TJ Hawkinson? What happens now with Jordan Addison coming in? But I mean, I don't think there's any question. Justin Jefferson runs that offense. Everything goes through him. And now with Dalvin Cook out the door and Alexander Madison, and we haven't really seen that Madison has taken on a very big receiving role in the past. So I still think there's plenty of ball to go around for Justin Jefferson. And like Sam said, he's the guy that's not going to lose you your weeks. And that's the kind of player that you want to take at the 101, the guy who's going to be the cornerstone for your team.
All right, so those guys are off the board. Let's continue on with this tier, because the rest of this tier is Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp. And I know a lot of people are ready to just go right back into the Cooper Kupp business after last year. And that's fine. Like, that's fine. Like Ross from Friends kind of fine. But to me, I'm looking at it, Alfredo, and I'm thinking to myself, look, Tyreek Hill got 170 targets last year. Like, Tyreek Hill is in a situation right now where I kind of want to go back to that well. That's the well that I feel is more potentially durable, despite the fact that maybe Cooper Kupp, in some PPR formats, you're thinking in your head, look what he did a couple years ago. But I don't think that is attainable again. Not with Stafford's health, not with the volatility that could be there between both of their healths. I think Hill is the safer of those two investments at the top. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, pay no attention to the Miami Dolphins helmet behind me, please.
I know. It's a loaded question for Miami, man, but still, You know
what? I've gone back and forth on this, honestly, and I think now I'm starting to lean more and more towards Tyreek Hill. Simply because there's not going to really be that big of a difference between Kupp and Hill being the top targets on their offense. But it's like you said, you're not only hoping that Kupp, who is now on the wrong side of 30 and dealing with another injury, he's got to make sure that, or he's got to hope that Matthew Stafford's going to be healthy as well. And that team could just be really, really bad this year. Like, we really don't know much about the Rams. Whereas the Dolphins, we know the identity of this team. Like, they're still not really going to be focusing on running the ball that much. Their idea is going to be get that ball into Tyreek Hill's hands as many times as possible. We're fine with them having Waddle and Hill because each of these guys still get the massive target share. And when you go back and you look at the fantasy points per game, Tyreek Hill was not that far off of Justin Jefferson. So if we're looking at maybe a full season of healthy Tua and a couple of maybe more boom games, Tyreek might have actually finished as the wide receiver one in fantasy, and this would have been a totally different conversation.
I can hear the people on YouTube screaming at me right now. But what about Tua's concussions? Why is all of a sudden one guy, quarterback health proof, but the other is not? I guess, Sam, my thing is, like, I saw Mike White play for the Jets. Mike White's all right. He can get you by, I feel like. I don't know how I feel about Stetson Bennett yet in the NFL. And look, Stetson Bennett maybe doesn't get enough credit for what he did at Georgia. And I've actually defended him more than I'd like to say that I have over the past 2 years at times. Because, when you go out there and you keep winning national championships, I think it matters. But at the same time, for you, is it Cooper Kupp? Is it Tyreek Hill when you're looking after Chase and Jefferson off the board and you want to go wide receiver in the top 5?
In my head, over the last 3 minutes, I've gone back and forth about 6 times. And it's tough because at this part of the draft, you're picking nits, right? Like, you're finding the smallest things to plug holes into these profiles. And I'm gonna go with Tyreek Hill. I've had him above Kupp all off season. Obviously, Cooper Kupp is back practicing after the hamstring injury he suffered earlier this offseason. But if that thing lingers at all, like, that could be a cause for him to potentially miss games. Again, Matthew Stafford and Tua's health, I think, are probably about even in the potential for them to get hurt. Matthew Stafford, I think this offseason, I think there might have been reports that he was considering retirement. Like, if that's a thing, there's a chance that I think the Rams, 6 weeks into the season, just have a fire sale and get rid of a lot of these players. So if Cooper Kupp changes teams, what does that do for his potential value? And again, Miami is such a highly concentrated passing attack between Hill and Jalen Waddle. It's going to be those two guys every single week, unless one of them gets hurt. Like, the floor is about as high for those guys as Chase and Jefferson, I think.
Yeah, the tough part for me is, we're looking at the ADP, and you're going to be in some drafts, everybody, where, they'll be running back heavy first round still. And if you can get Cooper Kupp, I think at 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range, if he falls there, that's great. That's the great value where Cooper Kupp is. it's that top 5 to me where I still go, oh, I just don't know if I can get there. Like, I'd rather have Hill. There's a part of me that considers Kelsey. Everybody knows I'm a Bijan fanatic, but let's get to that tier 2 here and talk about this next group here. This group has Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Devonta Adams, Amon Ra St. Brown, and Garrett Wilson. This is a really good group. Now, this is, for the heavy wide receiver build guy, me, I'm living in this group. Typically, it's AJ Brown. I was just at the turn in a CBS draft I was just talking about with the Experts League there, where at the turn I took AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb. I feel pretty good about that. No matter what Jeff Radcliffe tells you on the show about his worries about CeeDee Lamb. But we're talking about, I can't remember if it was him or Sanis. One of the two of them is not on it, but you'll see. But here you go. So AJ Brown is my target in this group. Sam, if you have to pick one of these guys who are kind of in this cluster here in tier 2, who is your target guy and why?
For me, it's Amon Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams is going to start the season suspended for the first 6 weeks, and then might take another couple of weeks for him to get readjusted into the offense. And outside of that, like who is catching balls for the Detroit Lions? Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta getting a lot of run this offseason, but they're both rookies who, again, we don't know how they're going to perform in their first year. And last year, St. Brown had an elite 2.44 yards per out run. He averaged 5.1 yards after catch per reception. He only ran a route on 78% of the team's dropbacks. So there is room for him to improve and get closer to that 85 or 90% range. And finally, he had a 0.32 targets per route run rate, which was second only behind Tyreek Hill last year among players with 50 plus targets. So they are force feeding him the ball in any way imaginable. I think he offers a ceiling because I also don't expect the Lions defense to be that much better than it was last year. They obviously added a couple decent pieces in the secondary there, but I think they're going to be passing the ball a ton, and Amon Ra is the guy for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that first 6 weeks really stands out. He could be leading the league in targets and receptions by the time we look up there, and it might be hard to catch him at that point. Alfredo, in this cluster, who's your target guy? And also, let's throw in there, who's the guy that you're fading in this group too?
So I'll make it really easy for my target guy. It's Amon Ra St. Brown. I mean, I think this is a stat that's been copy paste, man. Like he's and I'm looking at it right now is that he's tied for the most receptions in the first 2 seasons of any wide receiver's career. Like it's hard to argue with that kind of volume. And like Sam said, the defense is not getting any better. Jameson Williams is going to be missing. And I don't know how much the 2 rookies are really going to eat away at what Amon Ra St. Brown was getting. We already saw players of the same caliber last year. So I'm good with Amon Ra there. And I think I might even take him as high as my wide receiver 7 or 6 in some cases. The guy, and I'm so sorry to do this to you, Joe, the guy that I'm fading here at price is going to be AJ Brown. And you know what? This burned me last year because last year I said for AJ Brown to pay off on his average draft position, he's going to have career highs in yardage, touchdowns, targets, everything. And of course he did that. He did all of that. And so like, I'm willing to go back to the well here again and say like, all right, for him to pay off on this ADP, he's going to have to beat everything he did last year. And I don't know that if we do get a healthy Devonta Smith, a healthy Dallas Goedert, a newly added DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell is apparently the running back 1 in Philly. I don't know. I do think it might be hard for AJ Brown to beat everything he did last year and earn this wide receiver 7 or wide receiver 6 ADP in some drafts.
You want to hear a depressing story? Amon Ra St. Brown's rookie season. I drafted him everywhere with my last pick, everywhere. Oh no! And this is the depressing part. Is like we have this is always the fun thing about you guys have known this. You're in the business. You have the tape of proving whether you're right or wrong all the time about stuff. And I had him everywhere, and I was drafting him in all the shows and saying, Amon Ra St. Brown, I'm telling you guys, watch him in college. I'm telling you, it's a really good situation for him, all this stuff. And after 6 weeks, I had to cut bait because it just wasn't happening. And I needed, the buys were killing me, all this stuff, injuries. Like, you got to make moves. You got to stay competitive. And then the rest is history. Like, it was just miserable. Like, and I tried to pick him back up in all those leagues. And I think in the 4 that I had him in, I only got him back in 1 because I just got outbid. Things. It's just miserable. Just absolutely.
You've made me sad now. I don't like this.
I know. Well, let's try not to depress anybody too much further. But Sam, give me the guy you're fading in this tier 2.
To me, it's CeeDee Lamb. I think the increased competition with Brandon Cooks joining the team, Michael Gallup being further removed from his injury, and then the big unknown of Mike McCarthy. Like, I'm a Packers fan. The end of the Aaron Rodgers era was not pretty, and to have him calling plays is just, I know there were criticisms of Kellen Moore last year, and I think rightfully so to an extent, but if they really are going to go with the ground and pound, and I think the defense is going to be good enough where they will have that opportunity to do so, that it just, he might not get the pure target volume that he has gotten in the past, and is just sort of, he just doesn't excite me in this round. I think I'd rather have, I know I'd rather have Amon Ra than CeeDee Lamb. I think I'd probably have, Diggs and Adams and Brown even over him in this tier.
I'm very high on Garrett Wilson. I like the value that, because he's kind of going last of this grouping too. So, if this group kind of runs out on you in the second round and Garrett Wilson's still there, I think he's a very good consolation prize. Adams is the guy that I'm fading. 10 years in the league. To me, it's just like, that downgrade of Garoppolo is a downgrade that's significant enough that I don't think people care about enough besides me. But on top of which, the health of Jimmy Garoppolo every year, which is always suspect. Then you downgrade to that next quarterback, it just really worries me as an investment. Last year, there was so much discount on Adams, I drafted him everywhere. This year, there's not enough discount on Adams for me to draft him anywhere. We all know the best way to celebrate a fantasy football championship is through Trophy Smack. So if you want this glorious 36-inch fantasy championship trophy for your league, courtesy of our good pals over at Trophy Smack, the best destination for the most amazing fantasy tournament trophies you could possibly imagine. They've got loser awards, they've got rings, they've got belts, they've got everything. And we've got it over here to give you. All you have to do to win this is subscribe to Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Click that little bell till it goes ding and drop a comment below in this video, and that's it. That's all you got to do, and we'll be announcing a winner today. So stick around for all the rest of the Fantasy Football Festival of Friendship, and make sure you turn on those notifications so you can claim your prize courtesy of Trophy Smack. Let's go to tier 3. Really good group here. Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, and Cooper Kupp. Alfredo, let's start with you on this side here. Olave is the guy in this group that's really intriguing to me. I think he has enormous upside of that rookie year. Waddle, we all know he's very good. Then you have Smith and Higgins. And these are guys that are number 2s on their own team, but number 1s in fantasy. Can they repeat that feat in 2023?
I think that if there's a guy that's going to do it, Jalen Waddle, like we already talked about, it's such a concentrated target share there in Miami. Devonta Smith, I do think, has the talent to actually take over the most targets there in Philly. Whereas I don't know that T. Higgins is ever really going to overtake Jamar Chase. So if there's a guy that I think could become the number 1 on his team and repeat and continue to get the volume that we see from guys like Amon Ra St. Brown, it's Devonta Smith. But the guy that, and you mentioned him earlier, Joe, the guy that I love in this tier is Chris Olave. Like, that's the guy that I want to draft everywhere.
Yeah, and I have been. How about you, Sam? When you're looking at Higgins and Devonta Smith, they go back-to-back in ADP. Again, Waddle, I think we can all agree, is a tier above those guys for good reason because of the funneled volume that they're getting in that. Even though he's the number 2, him and Tyreek Hill are the offense. Like, they are the offense, end of story. But Smith, Higgins, that's a question a lot of people ask themselves. Who is your favorite of that duo? Because they're right neck and neck in ADP.
I slightly lean T. Higgins, just knowing that the Bengals offense is going to pass the ball more. Even if they're ahead in games, they have a very high pass rate over expectation. I think Joe Burrow is a better passer than Jalen Hurts. They're both very good quarterbacks, but from that perspective, again, we're picking nits here at some of the best players. And if Chase went down, I think Higgins has the potential to be that alpha wide receiver in that offense. Not that Devonta Smith doesn't, but he does have a slightly different profile than your true sort of X receiver, I think. And again, Higgins is, I do think he has the opportunity to potentially out target Jamar Chase. I think he wins at slightly different parts of the field. And I've been enamored with T. Higgins since he's entered the league, was one of my favorite picks when he first came out. And I think he's just a a baller, to be quite honest.
Oh, he absolutely was. And he was in college too. Here's a question for you, Sam. Most of the guys in this tier are kind of the young bucks. It's two old farts floating around here. Like me is Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen. They're back to back. They're both on the board. You got to pick one. Who are you taking? Sammy?
Pass.
Okay, well, that's fine. Well, if that's your answer, why pass on both? Because you think that next year is more appealing?
I'm buying the hype on Calvin Ridley. I'm buying the upside there. Given
so after that, you're moving into tier 4 where it says Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy. Those are the guys you'd rather have.
Yeah, and even Deebo Samuel. For me, Amari Cooper he doesn't excite me. Like you're banking a lot on Deshaun Watson returning to form. They brought in Elijah Moore. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones could take a step forward with Keenan Allen. Again, he's always consistent. Like he's always going to get you 10 half PPR points a week. I don't know that he has the ceiling quite as much anymore, despite catching passes from Justin Herbert. And again, Calvin Ridley getting passes from Trevor Lawrence, one of the best young quarterbacks in the game, is just an exceptional route runner. I think there are obviously the concerns of him not having played football in a long time, but I tend to trust that he'll be, the way he plays the game, he'll be able to return to form very, very quickly.
Now, look, these conversations are very important, and you want to make sure you're using these conversations as well as the Draft Wizard tools in your draft. So if you haven't already, make sure you download the app, go to fantasypros.com/draftwizard, go to fantasypros.com/assistant too, because this is what you want to check out, which is the draft assistant. So sync your leagues. That's very important. You can use my playbook to manage everything. So if you got leagues in all different places throughout the year, you got a league on ESPN, you got a league at CBS, you got a league at Yahoo, you can set all your lines from one spot in my playbook, but the draft assistant first, that's going to help you make sure that you get the best pick at the right time. You can have your own custom cheat sheets made by yourself. You can use a hybrid of experts that you respect, Joe Pisapia, and whatever it might be in terms of using the tools, including Draft Intel, where it tells you the tendencies of your league mates over the years, which is a stunning feature I'm telling everybody about all the time because it's so great. I can't believe our dev team and what they're capable of doing, but that draft assistant will help you just completely dominate the draft. It'll tell you, the picks behind you, who needs what, so you can make the right pick at the right time. The predictor too, that'll tell you the percentage of certain players making it back to you the next round. It's just going to help you absolutely crush. And that's what you're trying to do here. So again, fantasypros.com/assistant, use draft assistant, use draft wizard, sync your leagues today and get moving for the season. I'm going to put the same question to you. So you got the old farts, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and then we jump into tier 4, Alfredo, where you have Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, Drake London. Like there's a lot of exciting young talent here in this group. Are you also fading the old men in favor of the new blood? Not that Calvin Ridley's new necessarily, but look, a little less tread on the tires, especially over the last couple of years. But all of those guys, I think we'd agree. Like Cooper, Allen, they've been in the league a very long time. We know what they are. Do you want to take the known entity kind of at this twilight of their careers, or do you want to take the unknown with the upside?
So I'm one of the few guys that I'm still pretty high on Keenan Allen. I've got him as my wide receiver 15. And the thing that like you always see is even with these older guys, if they are good at running routes and they're not having to rely on just elite athleticism all the time, they can kind of last a little bit longer in the league. And we're seeing that with DeAndre Hopkins last year and Devonta Adams, and guys who are just good at getting open will continue to get targeted. And that's what Keenan Allen does. And that offense last year with Joe Lombardi running the show just was not great. Now with Kellen Moore coming in, and I know it's not going to be perfect either, but they push the ball downfield a bit more. They're still going to target the slot. CeeDee Lamb played out of the slot last year with 156 targets. And I think there's this weird misnomer that Keenan Allen is very injury prone, when in reality, before last year, he had only missed 2 games in 5 seasons. I think everyone just remembers the time where he pulled the camera up and he was like, "Start me tonight."
Oh,
and
people they are wounded about that.
Still hurt.
They are
still
wounded.
hurt. But I mean, Keenan's been still very productive. He's been a top 14 wide receiver in 5 of the last 6 seasons. And last year to cap off the season, which is why I'm not too worried about the age, from week 11 to 17, he was a top 3 fantasy wide receiver in a abysmal Chargers offense that really was not running at full strength. So now you get a Chargers offense that should get an upgrade, get their offensive line back. Some of these targets that go to Keenan Allen will be a little bit deeper downfield for some more explosive plays. I'm still pretty much all in on Keenan Allen where he's being drafted.
I'm actually with you on Keenan Allen. He's the one I prefer of the two. I'm very much on Elijah Moore. So it's more like, okay, if you want certain parts of offenses, right, what's the cost that you want to buy in? And to me, I look at it, I'm like, well, Keenan Allen still makes sense at the cost. And Amari Cooper, to me, I don't know if he does. Like Elijah Moore makes a lot more sense because it's a lot cheaper. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if I'm wrong on Amari Cooper, it hurts a lot more. I think that's my problem. This next tier is fascinating, though, because you have a lot of potential, I guess is the best way to put it. Ridley, Deebo Samuel, a couple years ago had a huge season, but we know that the carries have gone away. DJ Moore in a new place. Jerry Jeudy with a new coach. Terry McLaurin dealing with the turf toe injury. That's not a place I like to be. Hopkins in a new spot. Watson with a new quarterback. London with a new quarterback. Godwin with a new quarterback. And then Tyler Lockett with JSN nipping at his heels. This is an interesting area. So, Alfredo, give me your favorite guy in tier 4 of this grouping, or maybe a second one, and the guy that you're just running for the hills from.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit. And there's two guys that I've been targeting in this just because I love the potential for them to break out in a big way as second-year players. And it's Christian Watson and Drake London. And Watson right now is my wide receiver 20. And I think we saw a lot of the potential for him as a rookie, where he was, wide receiver 9 to finish the season, weeks 10 through 17. But a lot of that was just based on touchdown stuff. So you try to look at some of those peripheral metrics, and he was still top 15 in targets per route run, top 12 in yards per route run, and he is actually part of pretty elite company when you're looking at that yards per route run metric, and why that's so important, because these are guys that are being asked to do things that are a little more complex and get downfield and be the primary target. And when you look at rookie wide receivers that were getting the same amount of yards per route run or more, it's Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, Chris Olave, who we mentioned, and then Christian Watson, who joins that group. So I think there's a lot of things, peripheral metrics here that can get you excited about the potential of Christian Watson. And I think that right now, what's kind of suppressing the ADP is the unknown of the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. I think if Aaron Rodgers was still on this team, Christian Watson might be going like a full round earlier because everyone would be so excited.
Oh, that I agree with 100%. Yeah.
So I think
kind of like the discount though, but don't you, like, in a way,
yeah,
the discount to me has really popped because of the Jordan Love uncertainty. It makes, and that's the guy I've been targeting a lot, my wide receiver 3. He's looked good. He's looked okay. I mean, I know like that's like the worst thing, right? For the rest of this division, it's like, oh great, Favre and then Rodgers. I don't know if Jordan Love's going to reach those heights, but man, that's got to be annoying if you are a Bears fan or if you're a Vikings fan. Like, it's just kind of frustrating the hell out of you. So Watson's the guy. Who's the other one for you again? It was
the other guy that I really do like from this, because the potential, is Drake London. And I think for that, it's doing a bit more of projecting. You're going to be in a low volume passing offense, but he's got everything that you're looking for in a guy who's getting the target share, the targets per route run, all that stuff. And he also had a really impressive season where his rookie numbers get thrown into the mix with guys like Jefferson, Chase, OBJ, AJ Brown. So, I mean, there's a lot of things there that just look good. And by the end of the season, when Desmond Ridder did take over, I know he wasn't great, but the 6 more pass attempts per game that he was getting over Marcus Mariota, it's helpful. And if that number maybe turns into 31, 32 pass attempts per game, which is not anything crazy, it could be really good for the Atlanta Falcons. And London, at the end of the season, he was getting more points per game than Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, DK Metcalf. Like, he was looking pretty good towards the end of that year. I think it's just going to be all about how that team gels together with Ridder, Pitts, and London all healthy and playing together. And
they have that pivot to Heineke too, if they need to.
Yeah.
And then Heineke's been okay. Like, he made McLaurin and Dodson okay. Like, it's fine. Like, it's fine. Not great. I'm not getting excited, but I'm with you. The Drake London talent is tremendous. All right, Sam, this grouping, who pops to you and who do you want to just absolutely ignore?
The guy who I'm really excited about is Jerry Jeudy. I think he's in a really good buy low scenario. He ran around on 73% of dropbacks last year. In each of the last 5 weeks, he had at least 7 receptions or 100 receiving yards and averaged 2.18 yards per route run. He also averaged over 5 yards per route run against man coverage, which is incredible. I trust Sean Payton to come in and sort of fix some of the kinks in this offense. I think Jeudy is just set for a major bounce back. Terry McLaurin, obviously dealing with the foot issue right now, is a bit of a fade for me. And even with some positive reports that he could get back sooner rather than later, there's a pretty big uncertainty again with Sam Howell under center and whether he'll continue to be force-fed the ball.
All right, I want to ask you real quick here because I know we're up against it. We got like 30 seconds. So Give me the one guy in that last tier 5 from wide receiver, like 28 to 40, Sam, that you love, that you're circling on your list real quick. Who's that name?
Jahan Dotson. I don't know if it's
I knew you were going to say it. I knew it.
I don't know if it's a coincidence that I've seen like 4 tweets this morning about Jahan Dotson, but
everyone's just coming around. They're starting to learn now. That's the idea.
Great contested catch player, 74 PFF receiving grade last year. The Terry McLaurin stuff, like I mentioned, love him.
Alfredo, name for you in this last grouping from 30 to 40?
Jordan Addison. Right now he's being drafted as a wide receiver 4, and we keep seeing rookies finish as top 24 players. It's not weird anymore to see rookies produce, and there's plenty of ball to go around there in Minnesota. So Jordan Addison.
Go check out Sam Hoppen, of course, all year long over on FantasyPros.com, dropping all the knowledge. And please go check out the Football Guys show, too, with Alfredo Brown, Dave Kluge, and all the great people over there at Football Guys. Follow him on the Twitter machine at @ThePretendGM. Gentlemen, it was great to talk to you about the wide receivers. We're going to hit a quick break. When we return, more Fantasy Fest right here on Fantasy Pros. Don't go anywhere. Like the stream, subscribe to Fantasy Pros YouTube, and we'll be right back after this.